Monday Morning Quarterback, NorthJerseySports.com's original multimedia series talking all things football across North Jersey. This is Season 5, Episode 13, the last one before we find out who this year's state champions are. I am Corey Doviak, being joined by my illustrious panel of North Jersey football insiders, starting with the venerable one. He is Jimmy Avatabile. What is going on, Jim?
Hey, what's up, Corey? It's that special time of year. It's finals weekend at Giant Stadium, or Kean, if you're playing there. And it just seems like yesterday we were walking out of the stadium last December. It's amazing how fast it goes.
It was a warm night. Let's just hope that we get that same type of weather again this weekend. But one guy who doesn't care about the weather, in fact, in the middle to late November, he'll hop on a plane and fly out to Minnesota, maybe even, well, where are you tonight, Brian Carr?
This week I got an early trip out to Chicago, squeezing in some work in between the weekend and MetLife on Thursday.
Yes.
A nice trip. We have, it's a great time of year, like Jimmy said, with the, it's holiday time, and it's also that time of year, exciting weekend coming up at MetLife or Kean. Looking for some really good excitement down there.
Yes, absolutely. But the most excitement you're going to have, everything from this point forward will pale in comparison to what you witnessed on Thursday on the own home turf. Brian, quickly. Now, we're not going to get deeply into this, but just go ahead, crow a little bit. Dumont 43, Tenafly 6. Go ahead. Have your say.
No surprise. No surprise. Tenafly is a little down. Honestly, they have a 1,000-yard rusher, and he got hurt in the first quarter, so that kind of took him down. But as expected, Dumont has enough offense. And, the kids, hey, great job on the seniors going out a winner. We Sam Bruno and I like to promote, this Thanksgiving game because it's a great tradition. It brings back all the alumni. And, by the way, Sam and Tenafly had the 1967 team there, undefeated team, and the 1977 had two guys, John Trainer, Old Japan, and Tenafly grad was there. So they honored those two different classes. But, it was great for the kids. I was really excited for the seniors and our friend Stephen Capone and the rest. And there's Ryan Cacciatafaro and Jake Rogers, and one other guy was Brandon Cervantes, the senior captains who go out a winner. And, hey, they're 5-5, and I think Ricky Bird's got them in the right direction. And they got 33 kids coming back next year, so we'll talk about that later. But good way to end the season for those guys, and we get into the playoffs.
Yes, so we're into the playoffs now here, and tonight we will speak to one coach who will be leading his team into MetLife Stadium. River Dell's DJ Nimphius is going to join us. His team is the defending state sectional champion. They're going to get a chance to defend their title Saturday, the 4 o'clock game at MetLife. As I mentioned, it's top-seeded Ramapo, it's second-seeded River Dell. And in that bracket, Jimmy, chalk held, and I think, listen, Demarest, that game we talked about last week, that was a great one. So had they gotten there, it would have been fun too. But one of the games I'm most looking forward to this weekend is Ramapo River Dell.
Hey, no question. We walked off that field October 20th at River Dell. Ramapo just held on 23-20, and we kind of sensed that they'd be seeing each other down the line, and fortunately for both of them, it's in the final this Saturday.
Yes. All right. So we're going to go through all the brackets here. We'll break down all the games coming up that have local interest this weekend. But let's do our interview first. Let's turn now to one of the coaches who will be participating in the festivities this week. He is maybe the most, the guest who have appeared the most on this show over the 5 years that we have been doing it. He is a man who is often inappropriate, rarely inaccurate. He is our friend, Riverdale head coach, DJ Nimphius. What's going on, Coach?
How you guys doing?
Did you like that introduction? That's your line. I stole it from you.
Yeah. It's a great thing to be quoted about, right? That's my life. That's my life. Well, it's like the difference between loneliness and solitude. One's painful, one's supposed to have glory. I haven't figured out which one's which for me. So.
Okay, let me take notes on that too. But the reason we have you on here is an obvious one. The big one, Saturday against rival Ramapo in MetLife Stadium. Let me give you a generic one first. How you feeling here a couple days out from the big one?
I feel good. I think we've had some good preparation. It's the 8th time we played them, I think, in the last 39 games. So, we're kind of used to preparing for them. They're a little different every year, and I think you're going to get that. I think we've gotten better during the course of the year, and we feel like our preparation has gone well.
Yeah, and you having played them so often over the years, but more specifically having played them already this year, I mean, listen, you and Coach Gibbs have been at this a long time. You're both very savvy. Stuff you kept off tape, stuff you figure he kept off tape, stuff you think you're going to throw in there, or is just a matter of we're going to do what we do and hope we do it better?
Well, I think the game comes down to people, comes down to matchups, and it'll still come down to what you do well. And you want to make sure you're doing the things that you do best most often. And I would imagine that most good teams think that right now. So we want to know where our bread's buttered and kind of work on those things, and some things that we haven't been as good at, but we thought we could get a little better at. We have, and you want to eliminate some things. You don't want a lot of junk. You don't want a lot of rubbish in your preparation. You want to streamline things the best you can. You are who you are at this time of the year.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Yeah, Coach, obviously the listeners know the first game was a 23-20 game. It went down to the end. Both teams had opportunities to win the game. In the first matchup, it looked that Ramapo was really able to run the ball effectively. Was that a surprise to you, and how do you go about taking that away from in the championship game on Saturday?
Well, again, I thought they ran the ball well. I thought they had a very good game plan. They have some good kids carrying the ball. They're excellent up front. They got some experience there. You try to make them, play a little left-handed if you can. I think every team tries to do that with an opponent this time of the year. It's the Northeast. You got to stop the run game. You got to be able to run the football. I mean, that's just the way it is. In this part of the country, you got to be able to do that. And they did a better job than that the first time we played. And we're going to try to do a better job ourselves on both sides of the ball doing that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brian, before I get to my next one. You'll probably steal it here, but let's see. Go ahead.
Which one? Hey, last game against Demarest, we called it a classic. You think that the game you're going to play against Ramapo will be similar to this past week's game against Demarest? Whoever has the ball last, maybe the team to win?
I think we're both very good defensive football teams. I think that. I think they're really sound. I love some of the things they're doing on both sides of the ball. I think I say it to you every time I talk to you about playing these guys. They're sound. They believe in what they're doing. You're going to have to make sure you play a game where you're sound in what you're doing. I think the score of the game takes on a life of its own. Whatever it takes to be successful in the game. I don't know what the final score of the game will be, but we're going to have to be ready to battle against an excellent football program. I don't know. I didn't know the Demarest game was going to take on that kind of life either. We've been in a lot of close games this year, so we got to get out of the gate and take care of the ball and play the game the way we want to play the game. I'm sure they're feeling the same way.
There's so many things that I could go back and ask you about that Demarest game, but I think I did a 18-minute soliloquy with a play-by-play running of the fourth quarter. So go back and check out Monday Morning Quarterback Season 5, Episode 12 if you want to hear it. I don't want to rehash. I do, but we don't have time to rehash the whole thing with you. But the one thing I will bring up from that game, Dave Estevez, he's an all-timer. And I've said this before on the show. When I first got into this business, I was working for the Suburban Trends we were based in Butler, and I used to cover the old Bob Jones run and shoot offenses. They had
I coached Bob's son, I coached Bob's son, Daryl, right?
No, I did not.
The Walk Hill Valley AD, I coached Bob's son, Daryl, and I coached his daughter, and I taught his daughter, Amy.
See, small world. 6 degrees of separation with DJ Nimphius. I'm sure we could get anywhere in the state of New Jersey with that. But,
gray hairs will do that.
Yeah, and a gray beard, which I'm sporting nowadays. But there was they had the great Scott Brown, who went on to play at Princeton, and then they had a kid named Dennis Carrero, who ran their offense brilliantly. He was about 5'6", 5'7", listed in the program as 5'10". He was nowhere near that. You couldn't tackle him. He'd run around everywhere, all over the place. And it was when I first got the inkling of it doesn't matter what comes next, whether, whatever happens at the next level, if there is a next level. For Dennis Carrero, I don't believe there ever was. Doesn't take away from the fact that he was one of the, first of all, best high school football players that I've ever covered, because he could do so many things on the high school football field. Now, Dave Estevez is a higher level recruit. I understand all that, but my point is I don't care what happens next for that kid. He is one of the best high school athletes all around that I have covered, and I would say on a public school level, the 3 sports, the best since Demarest Richie Goulad, who was all county in 3 sports as well. So I said all that. What else do you want to add about your quarterback?
Again, I bring it up all the time. I think he gets publicly embarrassed when I talk about him. So I try not to do that. And, I think David would rather, I kind of deflect everything to his teammates. That's the kind of guy he is. He's very humble. I think he thinks an awful lot of the other quarterbacks we've played against. I think he thinks the Ramapo kid's an excellent football player. I think he looks at some of the things he does, says, I wish I did some of the things that he did a little bit better. He tries to work on that. He thinks the boy from Demarest is an excellent player. He's a kid that's constantly trying to improve. I think he appreciates everything around him, and I think, that's what makes him special. And we're fortunate to have an opportunity to coach him, and I look forward to every day coaching the kid. He's a really, really important person, to me. I mean, I think to everybody in the community, he's a really regular guy. People in the hallways cheer for him. I don't really like to add much to the kid. I think that's kind of personal between he and his friends and the guys in the program. So he doesn't think of himself as being anything special, and maybe that's what makes him special.
Breaking news here on the Monday Morning Quarterback. DJ Nimphius does not like his quarterback.
What's that?
Anyway, Jimmy, go ahead. One more time around for Coach.
Yeah, Coach. I mean, obviously we've talked about Dave. I mean, he's a tremendous player, and at almost at times it seems like the other kids don't get as much attention. And if you can, going into this year, you had a relatively inexperienced team. If you can, talk about some of the kids that have come on during the year, especially, Jack Racine and your running back, Dave Fletcher, if you could.
Well, again, I think when you look at both programs that are playing in this game, you're going to see things like that. Coach Gibbs has to introduce new kids into the program he thought probably were close to being ready last year. They were excellent football players, but he had kids in those slots already. We kind of fall in the same category. So it's not a matter of the kids weren't good players to begin with. It's just a little bit more difficult to play at places, such as ours or Ramapo or Old Japan, where you're constantly just following kids who are real good and paid their dues. So, Sean Burke, has played strong safety for us. He's a great special teams player for us before this year. His brother had started for us. Kyle Ziegler started for us for a couple of years on the offensive line. Asim Green, we thought was going to be a good player. It's turned out to be a real good player up front for us. Obviously, Jack and David. Jack Racine played for us as a sophomore. He started both ways for us. But we have another Sirico playing for us. Michael's a real nice player. He's a sophomore, and all of our 3 linebackers, 2 of them started as sophomores last year. And so again, it's just, I guess it's just a process of bringing guys through and, guys buying in and seize an opportunity when they get it. So, it's not a surprise that they've played well. It's just a growing situation. So, you kind of got to live with the discomfort of watching them struggle a little bit, but it's not like they're not trying. Eventually they get better. So, we only start, I was trying to think the other day, I think we start 3 seniors 4 seniors. Four
That's
seniors.
crazy.
I think we start. That's it. Everybody else is underclassmen.
That's crazy. Well, I guess I'm just.
I don't think they're much different.
I'm penciling you in.
You know, I think Coach.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think Coach Gibbs is in the same situation. I think they're pretty young. Believe it or not, I think they're pretty young.
Yep.
I mean, the quarterback's a junior. He's excellent. You know, his linebackers are tremendous. I think they're all juniors. You know, so he's a junior laden team. I mean, they're pretty special. But you know, it's just what you go through. It's not just us. It's I think a lot of really good programs.
I'm penciling you in for an appearance, season 6, episode 13, 1 year from today. Brian Carr, Go ahead. Last one for the coach, and then we'll let him get back to it.
Hey, Coach, I don't know if I always remind you of this, but you've made the playoffs the last 11 years in a row. Last time you were there. The first time you were there was 2007. You haven't stopped. Tell us about it. What do you think the program has done to really make your program so successful?
Work ethic. I don't think it's a surprise. Work ethic. You know, you need some talent. You know, talent. You still need talent. You know, but we always say, you know, it's you know, talent lays the floor and character sets the ceiling. I think we've gotten some real character kids, some real good people, tremendous support from the community, from the alums, and you know, the kids work hard. You know, we got a lot of multi-sport athletes. They buy into the weight room. They're in at 6 a.m. pretty much all year round, and you know, I think that's kind of given us a nice foundation for what we can do. But you know, there's no substitute for hard work and some success and running with it and trying to do the right thing on and off the field. And we all make some mistakes with that, but I think our kids have been, you know, genuinely trying to do the right thing, and there's no surprises. There's very few surprises in this life, Brian. I mean, we're proud of what we've accomplished, and we'd like to accomplish some more, and we want to stay at it. So, you know, that's kind of how we are. You know, we're not the most impressive-looking bunch of guys out there, but we certainly give it, you know, our due diligence, and we're proud. We're a very proud program, and that's how we approach things.
How about for you personally? You excited?
Well,
that's
you know, I don't know. I mean, emotion. It's you know, I think you kind of got to get yourself into it. At this time, you got to really get by yourself. You know, the head coach, and kind of work yourself through things and make sure you've done all the things you can do, and that way, with your approach with the program, you know, the kids and the coaches is pretty consistent. So I'm excited. I'm enthused. I'm happy. There's one to go. The bottom line, there's one to go, and we haven't accomplished anything yet. You know, there's one to go. We'll go out there and give our best effort and our best preparation, and we'll be ready to go.
I was going to let you out of here, but then something just popped into my mind here. As I was interviewing you after the game last week with another reporter, he asked you the question about how big was the experience of having been there, and you played that down. Yeah.
Zero.
Just talk about that angle.
Well, you know, I've been teaching history for 33 years. I'm going to tell you something. You can teach a Class 1 period, and you can really kill it. And the next period, you're teaching the same material, and boy, you stink. And that's just the life of being around kids. So kids are really emotional. You know, kids feed off great plays. You know, you don't know what you're getting any day with a group of kids. I think having played down in the stadium has zero impact on this team. Being in the final has zero impact on this team. It's you know, it's a new group of guys, and every day is new. So you kind of got to check the pulse of your team, and get them ready to go play a football game. Because once the game's going to start with a kick, that I know. The game's going to start with a kick, and then you got to go out there and you got to play at a high level, and you got to play within yourselves, because it gets real quiet out there. I've said that to you before. It gets quiet out there. You just got to go out and play.
Yeah.
I think I was the same way as a player. I didn't get into that excitement stuff. I mean, it's you know, I tell the kids all the time that after every play, when you're watching a film, it doesn't tell you what the temperature was, doesn't tell you what the wind conditions were. You know, the guy who's a rah-rah guy, did he really carry out his assignment? Go out and play the damn game.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that stuff, that's just not me. That's just not me. Yeah.
DJ Nimphius. He's going to go out and play a damn game on Saturday against Ramapo in the North 1 Group 3 State Sectional Final. And as always, we appreciate your candor, we appreciate your insight, and we appreciate you joining us here on the Monday Morning Quarterback.
Thank you, boss.
All right, interesting stuff there, as always, with DJ Nimphius. So let's move on now. Let's talk about the rest of this state sectional final weekend that is about to take place here. Most of our interest is in the North 1 bracket and in the non-publics, but let's take the only team outside of that purview. That's in North 2, Group 2. That's Rutherford. Rutherford is the number 1 seed in the North 2 Group 2 state sectional playoffs. They will play Hackettstown in the final. Thursday night, they will kick off the weekend. I guess it's kind of a home game for Rutherford. You know, MetLife Stadium is very close to the the high school there. There's going to be a lot of people in attendance. Rutherford has been there before. Bri, you are a resident Rutherford expert. Why don't you start us off there?
Hey, Andy Howe's done a great job this year. You know, we saw them win the NJIC championship against Hasbrook Heights in a really good game at home and overtime. We talked about their dynamic duo, the two quarterbacks threat, Kyle Russell and Richie Marquez. So they've got some, really. And then we forget about Billy Finn. Billy Finn is always there. He had a pick six against New Milford. Touchdown. I mean, Billy Finn's always in it. No, I'm sorry, he didn't have the pick six. That was Richie Marquez. But Billy Finn had a nice touchdown there. In the last game, that's why I want to remember Billy Finn. He had 15 tackles in there in the semifinals there. So Billy's standing out as a senior leader there, running back and linebacker. And our friend obviously also Lawson Fisher, one of our linemen. We always like those big uglies up front, and he's a standout defensive lineman, always in the backfield. So, Andy's team looks to be on a roll. Going to play a Hackettstown team who's a 6 seed. So Hackettstown's come out and beat some teams above them. So I think Rutherford's going to have a little challenge. I haven't seen much on Hackensack. I don't know if Jimmy has, but I really like Rutherford, and hopefully, expect them to come out on top there.
Yeah, as soon as I say I don't even know where a specific team is or anything about them, I say, do you, Jimmy? And the answer is?
Yeah, I know a little bit about him. Very, very dangerous. Very, very dangerous team. You mentioned the 6 seed getting to the final. They're 8-3, but the one thing that jumps out on them is their schedule, their strength of schedule. They played Lakeland, they played Mount Olive, they played Newton, all finalists in their sections. Then in the playoffs, they beat Mountain Lakes, always dangerous, 35-7. Then they beat a one-loss Caldwell team, 47-27. So this is going to be a challenge for Rutherford, no doubt about it. And one common opponent, they both played Lenape Valley. They both beat Lenape Valley by 2 touchdowns. So I think it's got the capability to be a very good game. I know they're a high-scoring team, but I just think Rutherford right now has it going on defensively, offensively. I think Rutherford will walk out with the W, but I think it really can come down to the last couple of minutes.
Yeah, it should be good. And Brian Carr, that one's all you, correct? Covering that one for NorthJerseySports.com?
Yeah, I'll be there. Yeah, and that's right before my alma mater game, so I'll be there.
Oh, it is a...
Bridgewater. Bridgewater plays the second game that night on Thursday. Rutherford opens it, and then Bridgewater finishes it off on a rematch there with Westfield, third year in a row.
Wow, Brian Carr will have an extravaganza on Thursday night down in the big house. Yeah, good for you. All right, let's move on now. Let's take it back to where we always seem to start. North 1, Group 1, Hasbrook Heights, the number 5 seed. Yeah, a little misleading there. They made it through. They're going to get a shot to defend their title against the number 6 seed, Pompton Lakes. And Jimmy, I mentioned it's a 5 seed against a 6 seed, but it's no surprise that either one of these teams is playing in a final.
Yeah, they're certainly not strangers to each other. They met in the final a couple of years ago. Last year, we were all at that great NJIC final at Hirschfield Park and won by Hasbrook Heights by a point. You mentioned Hasbrook Heights getting through a tough Cedar Grove team, having to drive the length of the field with under a minute to go just to force overtime. And then we've talked about, there's been a lot of talk about that win against New Milford. The last minute of that game, the field goals. But, Hasbrouckite's back. They're defending champions. Pompton Lakes, always a very, very physical team. No different this year. Very powerful running game. It's going to be a very, very interesting game again.
Yeah, it is going to be an interesting game. And Hasbrouck has been so solid defensively. I mean, Pompton Lakes has scored a lot of points in the playoffs, but it's not going to. I would be very surprised if this is an up and down kind of game. And Hasbrouck Bry has just, whether they've won games or lost games, they've only lost one, but the one they lost was a tight game too. Their playoff score is 12-6 in overtime against Cedar Grove, 10-7 against New Milford. Defensive battle, I think my point is if it gets to be a high-scoring game, I think it plays into Pompton Lakes' favor.
Yeah, I think you're right on, Corey. I think, Heights has proven they can play defense. I think what the key for the game is for Hasbrouck Heights, they need to score. And I was talking to Coach Bear last week, and I kind of told him that too, that they just got to score. I mean, they can play defense, and they can stop teams. We know Pompton Lakes can score, and they got Frankie Negrini in there who can run. He's a powerful runner, and their defense needs to stop him, but they just need to score a few points. And I think if they, score maybe 21-17, 17-14 Heights. But if the game, like you say, if the game gets up there and scoring, Pompton gets the advantage because they're used to scoring high amount of points. So I think it's going to be a good game. Two good coaches who have coached against each other in the past. We saw them last year in the NJIC championship game, so they're not, they know each other. They know what each other can bring, and it should be a really good game. NJIC, it's almost like it's last year's NJIC championship.
Yep, that's true. Two old school coaches going at it. That's going to be fun. That's North 1 Group 1. Let's move over to North 1 Group 2. And Jimmy, this has been an interesting bracket from the moment it was announced. Forget since it started playing. There was the undefeated matchup in the 4-5 game between Newton and Pequannock. Newton survived it. Then Newton goes on to beat Westwood. And it's Newton, the number 4, against Lakeland, the number 2. Now, you would think it goes in Lakeland's favor as the higher seed, but not the case when you go on past performance this season.
Yeah, no question. When we saw the bracket come out with Newton and Pequannock and Westwood in the top half, we kind of said, there's a possibility that 3 of top 4 teams are in that, section of the draw. I mean, Lakeland, very good team, 10-1 on the year. Their only loss is to Newton. I mean, and it was a surprising result the middle of the year when we saw Newton 42-14. Newton's a very, very physical football team. They dominated Westwood at the line of scrimmage. They run the ball. They also have, very good quarterback, Luke Young, running back, linebacker Will Larson. He's the guy that does most of the damage on the ground. I mean, Newton is another very, very good football team. Lakeland 10-1. They're going to have a couple breaks go their way. They're going to have to get some turnovers. In the first matchup, Newton ran for 461 yards against Lakeland, so they're going to have to slow down that running game to have any chance.
Brian, it's the same thing we were saying last week when we were, previewing the Westwood-Newton matchup. It was, contrast of styles. Newton likes to obviously run the ball and get ahead, and that's exactly what Lakeland can't let happen. You don't want to be playing catch-up against a team that's going to pound the ball and try to control the clock.
Right. Well, by the way, I happened to pick Newton when we did our picks at the beginning before the playoffs started.
Yes.
I hadn't really seen them, but now I've seen them, and they look very impressive. I saw them against Pequannock, played a tough, competitive game against them, and they had to hold on to win at the end. And then they pretty much dominated Westwood. Westwood got it close, but just couldn't convert. Their defense is solid, and like Jimmy said, quarterback Luke Young, really a stud, can make it happen. And they're a strong team. They look well-balanced and obviously have experience beating this team before. So I kind of lean to Newton again to come out ahead here in this matchup. Go Braves.
Go Braves. I learned something on this show. I just learned that Newton's nickname is the Braves. See? I'm always open to taking in new information. Speaking of teams that I don't know anything about, what are they, the Mount Olive what, Jimmy?
That I do not know.
All right.
Let's look that up.
Wow, you know what? It's like remember Stump the Schwab on ESPN? I just stumped Jimmy. That's a cool. Very rare.
We
Very
call
rare.
the 1-9ers from last year were in the final. Can we call that their new nickname?
I'll take it.
1-9er.
You could have told me they were the 1-9ers, and I would be like, "Wow, that's interesting." Well, listen, I don't know.
The Marauders.
Yeah, the what?
The Marauders.
Oh, okay. So they're going to go. They're headed in the North 1 Group 4 state sectional final. Mount Olive is the number 3 seed, heading into a tough matchup for the Marauders. Saturday, 7 p.m., MetLife Stadium. The nightcap on Saturday at MetLife. And Bri, listen, even if it was a team that I knew anything about, I would say that they're going to have a hard time with Old Tappan. But being that it's Mount Olive, I would be very surprised if Old Tappan is not standing there with the trophy raised after a comfortable victory in the state sectional championship game.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I hope, like I've told Old Tappan in the past, when they were playing Wayne Hills there, I hope for a good game for them, for their sake, so they can get prepared. As a fan, I hope for a good game here. Old Tappan seems to be on a roll, undefeated going in this game. Doesn't look like anybody's stopping them. So the only one that could possibly stop them may be themselves. And the way they played, they haven't stopped themselves all year long. So I think Coach Dunn is going to keep focused, sort of like DJ Nimphius with his team at River Dell. And I think Coach Dunn, who's been there before, well-seasoned, the coaching staff is going to have them prepared. And these kids, McNerney, DiBenedetto, these guys, Marquise Adenore, they're going to really be on their game. Aiden Bialy, my favorite name.
Yes, Aiden Bialy. Aiden Bialy, right?
Bialy. So, those guys are going to be up to the test, I think. And Old Tappan, like you say, I expect them to come out with the trophy. And hopefully it's a good game because I like close games, and that's what I enjoy about going to games, close games. So, but Old Tappan hasn't played many close games except for that Ramapo game that didn't really count, but they did have a close game against Ramapo. So maybe that gave them a little seasoning.
Yes, well, I'm rooting for a comfortable Old Tappan win. As you guys both know, I share a household with one Hope Doviak. She is rooting for a blowout, and I don't want to see my daughter disappointed, Jimmy.
That should be interesting. Hey, listen, in all seriousness, Mount Olive last year was 1-9. They're led by Brian O'Connor. A lot of our fans, listeners might remember him coaching successfully at Wayne Valley. They do have 2 outstanding players, quarterback Liam Anderson, who's run for over 1,000 yards, thrown for over 1,000 yards. He's a dual threat there, and their wide receiver Lance Johnson, an outstanding receiver. They run a spread offense, so they can score points. But again, when you talk about Old Tappan, it's just too many weapons. Anybody can beat you at any time, and I think Old Tappan comes home with the title.
Yes. Well, that would be a good night in the Doviak household. Moving on to North 1, Group 5, and, we got Union City in there, the number 3 seed against Montclair. I don't think we have to spend too much time on this one, Jimmy. Montclair, the overwhelming favorite. Union City, a great job to get over the hump, past the semifinal round, and into the final.
Yeah, they're a decided underdog, but they did play earlier this year, and there has been one team to hold Montclair under 40 points this year. They held them to 22 points. It was Union City. We mentioned before last week, Union City, very big offensive line, some very good runners. So, hopefully they can keep the ball away from Montclair, get go on some long drives, keep the ball away from them. And if you can get into the fourth quarter in a toss-up type of game, Montclair hasn't been in many of them at all, if any. So anything can happen, but I think Montclair is the prohibitive favorite.
Yes, absolutely. All right, Bri, let's switch over to the non-public Group 3 State Sectional Championship. A lot of scuttlebutt about where this game is being played. It is number 3, St. Joseph Montvale against top-seeded DePaul. rather than in MetLife Stadium, they are going to be playing Saturday, an afternoon slot at Kean University, 1 p.m. start. What are your thoughts, Brian? Obviously, you don't care where it's being played. You're going anyway.
Yeah, but our friend Bobby Main from WCTV brought up the idea of the WCTV guys going to make a road trip, because I was thinking about going all MetLife, but Bobby mentioned going down to see Joe's, so I said, sure, let's go. So it's a 1 o'clock matchup down there. I like the venue. We were there, I think it was 2011 we were there. Joe's was there that year. I remember Ramapo was there. I think Pascack Valley was there that year. So I think I like the venue, small venue. You know, it really, these crowds, there's not a big crowd in MetLife. So this will make the crowd look that much bigger in a smaller venue. So maybe the kids feel more of the crowd close to them. So, I mean, we've seen these guys. These guys are familiar with each other. We saw the matchup up in Montvale. It looked like DePaul was going in to win it. Jimmy had that inside information that maybe Nick Patty would have been pulled if DePaul made the next score, would have made it 28 or so to 6. And, you saw Nick Patty lead them back to victory from down 21-6. They came up with a win of 28-21. So, I mean, both teams have weapons. We've talked about DePaul. You know, you got Tyquan Roberson, who's really a solid junior quarterback for them. Nick DePalma, I call him the heart and soul. Nick's a tough guy. Their lineman is big. You know, there's a difference here. Last year, Joe's line was seniors. This year, DePaul's line is all seniors. I give them the edge, being the seniors and being that they were ahead up there in Montvale. I think there's a chance DePaul to win this game. And, you know, I think did I pick DePaul? I forget if I picked who I picked here.
I could give you that answer.
I may have picked Joe's. I think I did pick Joe's when we first did the picks.
Yes,
if I'm not mistaken, I probably did. So I'm flip-flopping here, you know. Hey, I've liked DePaul all season, and I have always liked Joe's. But I give DePaul, I want to give them the edge, you know. They haven't won. I think the eagerness to win a championship is going to be there. And, hey, if they can bring it, they can win it.
Yeah, a couple things here on this game. You know, we always talk about, and again, I am not advocating that state finals be moved out of the professional stadium, because I understand that the kids love the opportunity to play there, and it's something they talk about for the rest of their lives. They got to play in a championship. But, you know, we had Mike Quick on earlier a couple times this year. We talked about it. I've mentioned it in the past. There's nothing like a game like this played, that they won't have big crowds in MetLife, but it won't feel like a big crowd because it's cavernous. Mm-hmm. You know, back when state finals used to be played on high school fields, or some of the craziest atmospheres you could ever be involved in, and it was fun. And Jimmy, I think at Kean is going to provide some of that. And yes, it's not the home of the New York Football Giants and New York Football Jets, but it is a really nice college campus, and I think it's right-sized for this type of game that could really bring an atmosphere. It's not that far away from North Jersey. You know, I live in the upper reaches. It takes me less than an hour to get there. So I think, you know, added into the fact that this is going to be a good game between two really good teams is the fact that it's going to be played in a really good atmosphere in a cool place, even if it's not MetLife Stadium.
You know, you're 100% right. I mean, some people are acting like Kean is a parking lot type of facility. It's a beautiful Division III campus, great facility, two great teams, and let's be honest, let's call it the way it is. The state wants the big gate at Giant Stadium, and they think they have it with Phillipsburg.
Right.
And they probably will, but that doesn't take anything away from this game. It's going to be a great game, and it's going to be, like you mentioned, a big-time environment. And I think, I would expect, Vinny DePalma. Unfortunately, he fumbled the ball going in to probably put the game away, and I know that's been sticking in his craw ever since. And I would expect Mr. DePalma to have a big game on Saturday.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, there's just – listen, Joe's has had a good season, and it's just a matter of they got to maintain their focus. You know, there's been a lot of things swirling around the program this year. And, I think DePaul is focused because they haven't done this before. we'll see how it plays out on the field. I mean, could go either way. Not saying that any outside factors will play an outcome on, play a factor in the outcome of the game. But I also am not saying that can't be the case. You got to be focused in this type of atmosphere, and we'll see if St. Joe's can do that. Moving on, non-public Group 4, the number one team in the state, the number one team in the bracket, the Bergen Catholic Crusaders, fresh off their 41-16 victory over Del Barton. They will take on number 2 seeded St. Peter's Prep. St. Peter's Prep seems to be playing its best football at just the right time of the season. 42-19 win over Paramus Catholic in the semifinals. And Jimmy, this game will decide who the best team in New Jersey is for the season. What do you think?
Well, you mentioned 1 versus 2 in the bracket, 1 versus 2 in the poll. I mean, they met each other back in the middle of October, and Bergen physically won the battle of the trenches. That was their concern back then, and I believe it will be their concern again on Friday night, the ability to run the football against the very good defensive line led by the Adamanola brothers at St. Peter's, both are going to Michigan. They also have the outstanding defensive back wide receiver Shane Simon. Masai Maynard, the junior quarterback's gotten better and better every week. He's been outstanding in the 2 playoff games. Hey, for Bergen Catholic, it's run the football. I know Mr. McKenzie, Johnson, Langen, they're all healthy 100%. Mr. Classy, the wide receiver, went out in the semi before halftime with a sprained ankle. Apparently, he's 100%. So for Bergen, the secret to success against St. Peter's is the ability to run the football with Johnny Langen, the 2 running backs, and then the ability to go play action and take some shots downfield. I think Bergen Catholic is ready to win it, and it's going to be a great game. But I think Bergen gets out with the W, their first championship in what seems like forever on River Dell Ave. It's been 13 years.
Yeah, crazy when you think about it. Bri, anything to add?
Yeah, I think we saw Bergen early in the season, in the scrimmages, and we talked about it when we were there, Jimmy and I, that their line needed to develop. They weren't controlling the line of scrimmage, and it looks like they've proven that they can control the line of scrimmage during the season. So I think they look good. They haven't lost to any team in the state of New Jersey. Jimmy mentioned their game against Peters. Peters' only really loss in the state was against Bergen. So 2 very good teams, well-coached teams, excellent players on both teams. So, it could be just, we haven't talked much about turnovers, but, if somebody turns over the ball, that could be a difference here because it's a very good – we haven't seen that at Bergen much, that there hasn't been turnovers. So I don't like to jinx people, but it could come down to a turnover here or there that makes the difference in this game because both teams can score. Both teams are very good. It should be a good game on Friday night at MetLife.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, we are going to be out in force as this playoff atmosphere gets going on Thursday, starting with Brian Carr's 5 o'clock assignment in Rutherford, spilling right over. Well, Brian, you know what? Before we wrap this up, have your say about Bridgewater Raritan. Your alma mater is playing for a state championship. Give us your thoughts on that one.
Well,
let's take down Westfield. Let's take them down. Let's end this winning streak.
I have a feeling. I get the feeling that they're going to take Westfield down. Westfield, their offense is not what it had been in the past. They're a little, they're younger this year, but they've won 2 state championships the last 2 years. They beat Bridgewater, very close games. Pat Rice and I got to see him play a big, good Piscataway team, and they dominated them. Their line dominated. They have 2 good running backs. The quarterback, he is, workmanlike. And the guy I found, a new young man, his name is Brandon Myers. He's a stud tight end, and he plays linebacker. I mean, these kids they got a lot of guys. I'm not saying it because I went there, but I guess that helps that I went to school there. But the kids, they look like they have a really good team this year, and I think they're capable of winning it all. So, and Coach Spray, who's also an alum, is leading them the last 3 years, and I think they look really solid. And I, again, expect another good game for them on Thursday night at MetLife.
Ryan Botto, you're out. Brandon Myers, you're in. We'll talk more about it next week as we wrap up the state finals. We'll do it next week. We'll get some guests. We're going to do some other postseason stuff. The season ain't over here, but this episode is. We'll see you next week on the Monday Morning Quarterback.
Follow the leader.